Do you feel like you're missing some big secret about how to become a successful professional illustrator just because you didn't go to art school? If so, this is for you. Keep watching. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Business Witness. I'm Ness, and I'm a professional illustrator. Something I get asked all the time, like maybe once a month, is do I need to attend art school in order to become a professional artist? Many artists who are self-taught are very self-conscious about that, even if they are super talented. No matter their amount of skill, some of them feel like they're not as legitimate. If you're a self-taught illustrator, tell me in the comments, do you feel like that? And when a self-taught artist is struggling to get started on the business side of things, very often they'll ask themselves, okay, what am I missing? Is there some secret that is taught in art school that I missed out on? Well, I've actually been to art school, so I can tell you firsthand. First, after high school, I studied visual arts for 2 years. This was a very general program where we did a little bit of everything. And after that, I went on to do a diploma in 2D animation. And so I'm going to tell you about my experience and if I feel this is necessary, if I feel this has helped me to become a professional illustrator and all of that good stuff. But right before we get into it, maybe you have noticed already that we have had a glow up in audio quality. I'd really like to thank my friends at Movo for sending me this awesome mini microphone. I've only just started recording videos with it and already I feel like I can't do without. It's really awesome because it plugs directly into my iPhone to record the audio with the video, so it's really convenient. Thank you again so much, Movo, and if you're interested in this microphone, I will leave the link to the exact one in the description below this video. Alright, so let's get started. First of all, let's get this right out of the way. The big secret about art school is that there is no big secret. In art school, we learn a lot of very nice and useful things, but is there anything in there that is so mind-blowing that it gives a distinct advantage to graduates over self-taught artists, something that can guarantee them success? No. In fact, many art school graduates kind of flounder after art school because they really haven't been taught how to apply their knowledge or where to go from there, and many of them kind of don't know what the next step is. That being said, there are jobs in art that you absolutely need a diploma to be considered for that position. And mainly that is an in-house studio artist position. So let's say at a company, like a video game company for instance, they might hire illustrators and artists and animator in-house full-time to work at their offices. Those are permanent positions, and those usually they will require that artists have some sort of diploma or relevant education. In some of these positions, self-taught artists might be able to do the job just as well, but it can be a hurdle to get considered for the position or to get access to the interview if you don't have a diploma. So for example, after I graduated with my 2D animation degree, I started a job at a mobile game studio. I did that for 3 years as a position as a 2D illustrator and animator, and they absolutely did require a diploma to get that position. However, there are also a lot of things in art that you can do without needing a diploma at all. And first on the list is freelance illustration or any kind of freelance anything. Freelancers aren't in-house artists, they are outside contractors that are brought in for very specific projects, for very specific tasks. So in illustration, this includes things like picture books or editorial illustration, advertising, greeting cards, and a lot more. I have now been a freelance illustrator since 2018 full-time, and in all that time, not once have I been asked for my diploma, which kind of saddens me because I worked hard for that diploma. But in the freelance world, no one cares about that. It is all about the portfolio. As long as you have a great portfolio that demonstrates all of the skills that you need to do that job, then no one cares if you've been to art school or not. But what about the knowledge that you actually learn about in art school? Is that useful? Is that something that is life-changing? Is that something that can put you ahead of other artists? So here's a list of things that, in my experience, are taught in art school. First of all is specific techniques. And this will depend on the diploma that you go for, but you will learn specific techniques relating to your area of study. So in the visual arts program, I learned how to paint, I learned color theory, I learned observation drawing and how to do figure drawing, all of those things. In the animation program, I learned all the animation principles, how to use the equipment, and about different animation softwares. The second great thing about art school is discovering new things. And I will say this is maybe the best one because you don't know what you don't know. In art school, teachers will have you try things that maybe you wouldn't have been attracted to on your own, or maybe things you didn't even hear about before. So right after high school, when I enrolled in the visual arts program, at that time, I'd done a little bit of digital art, I'd done a little bit of pencil and things like that, but I hadn't tried a lot of different media. But in the visual art program, they had me try oil painting and casting plaster molds, collage, building my own canvases, sculpting clay, and a bunch of other things, even paper mache. I discovered a lot of things that I didn't know I liked, and I also definitely discovered what I hated, which is also important to know. The third thing that art school is really good for is feedback. Having the teachers there to guide you, and even having the other students around who can comment on your work, that is definitely very helpful. When you're stuck, especially, you can get help. A teacher can give you tips on how to get you unstuck, can tell you what you're doing wrong, and can give you critique and feedback. That can be really helpful compared to practicing on your own, so you can improve more quickly. So that is the thing about art school. Often students from art school will be progressing a little bit quicker compared to self-taught artists. In general, of course, there are exceptions, but this is mostly because of their very guided curriculum and the constant feedback. Lastly, the last thing that art school does a lot, and that surprised me a little bit, is a lot of practicing by doing. And this could be unique from my experience, but I did 2 different programs in 2 different schools. And in both of those schools, we did a lot of exercises rather than a lot of theory. So there was much less actual instruction than I expected there to be, a little bit more in the animation program because there's more technical aspects to it, much less in the visual arts program. There was almost no instruction there. In many art programs, the learning is very project-based. So you get there in class and they say, okay, class, today we're going to do acrylic painting. The paint is over there and the brushes are over there. Let's go. And then you just do the thing and you learn as you're doing it. And this is really fun, and it's a cool way to learn, especially for people who never did very well in the traditional schooling experience. This is very refreshing. However, notably, this is also something that you can do on your own without art school. I still have some more stuff that I want to tell you about art school, and especially some alternatives to art school that I want to tell you about. But just before we get into it, I really want to know, did you go to art school? If so, what did you study and did you find it helpful? If you didn't attend art school, do you feel like it's hurting your chances as a self-taught artist to become professional? I would really like to hear your thoughts on that, so go in the comments below and let me know. So all in all, between the 2 programs, I did 6 years of art school, and during that time, there's only a handful of things that I can really say that was really awesome, and I'm glad I went for that. So I want to tell you about these things, the best things that I learned in art school. And the first thing is perspective. I always hated drawing backgrounds before, but now I realize I hated it because I didn't know what I was doing. I would always struggle and inevitably fail to draw what I was imagining in my head. So of course it was a very unpleasant experience, very out of my comfort zone. That is until the animation program. So in that program, I got 2 different classes of perspective and then another 2 classes of background design. And after those classes, I was changed. I love doing backgrounds now, and that's because I actually know what I'm doing. Of course, I could have learned perspective on my own, but it's something that's a little bit more complex. There's a lot of technicalities, and I really didn't even know where to start or what were the things that I needed to learn. So having that very clear curriculum to follow with someone to give me feedback about all the things I was doing wrong, that was extremely helpful. And I was having so much trouble with backgrounds before that I don't know if I would have learned it just as well by myself. The second biggest thing that I learned in art school was mindset, and especially accepting critique. In art school, you're kind of forced to learn to accept critique and learn to deal with it. Many art programs do public critique where everyone puts their artwork up and all of the students have to say something about all the pieces. And of course, you'll often hear feedback from your teachers, sometimes feedback that can be a little bit harsh or hard to hear. Before art school, critique would make me feel very angry, upset, argumentative. I would really dig in my heels and become resistant. But eventually, after a few years of art school, I started to realize that when I actually applied the critique that my teachers were giving me, my artwork would actually get better. And that was a really good feeling, improving. I started being okay with the critique and then craving the critique because I was craving to improve myself. So it was a complete 180 that I did. Now critique doesn't even faze me anymore, which is a great thing because in professional illustration, it is inevitable, it is abundant, you always get critique. So it's really important to be able to deal with that. And the last biggest thing that I learned in art school is simply confidence. And sometimes I wonder if it's the biggest thing that self-taught artists lack. You are, of course, just as legitimate no matter how you learned your craft. But this lack of confidence can actually affect so much. It affects how you present yourself to potential clients, or if you even have the guts to apply to potential clients to begin with. Many self-taught artists aren't even sending out their portfolios because they assume they don't have a chance. Artists who have gone to art school at least have that reassurance and kind of that seal of approval that the diploma can give you. You feel a little bit more prepared, legitimate, just because you have that formal education, and that can make a bigger difference than the actual content of the education did. But now moving on to things that I didn't learn in art school. What are some of the biggest things that have been actually incredibly important in my art career that I did not learn there in art school? First thing would be animating in After Effects and creating cutout puppets for animation in Photoshop. These two things were basically 90% of my job when I was working at that mobile game studio right after graduating. And those are two things that I learned on the job. I didn't learn them in animation school. My animation program was based on hand-drawn animation, frame by frame, not cutout animation. The other thing that I learned after leaving art school was vector art in Photoshop. I also learned this at my first job in a mobile game studio. I was opening some of the files that the other artists were working on, files that I needed for my project, and a lot of them were working in vector. So I started seeing the vector all over the place in those files, and I was thinking, what is this? What do I do with that? And so I had to learn right there. And I actually ended up using vector for a long time after that. Even after I left, I was doing picture book illustration for 3 years exclusively in vector before I decided to change my style a little bit. So that ended up being extremely influential for me, and I learned it all also on the job. And lastly, the style that I use right now, which is a realistic digital watercolor that I do in Procreate. I also did not learn that in art school. I think when I was in art school, Procreate did not even exist. So I learned it all just a few years ago. About 3 years ago, I started doing Procreate and I developed my entire technique by myself. And that is not something that I learned in art school. Something that they will not teach you in art school is style. They will teach you some techniques, and then you're the one that decides what you do with those techniques. Your own voice, your style, that is 100% on you, and you will not learn that there. You will not even learn how to develop your style in art school. You're kind of left to your own devices on that. Another thing I did not learn about in art school is picture book illustration and surface design. So I did picture book illustration for 3 years. Now I do surface design, things like patterns, greeting cards. So of course, there are some programs specifically for illustration where you might learn some of that stuff. I did a general visual arts program and then I did animation. So I did not learn about specific illustration techniques about picture books or about surface design in either of those programs, and I learned it all by myself again. Which is funny because that's what I ended up doing professionally. So a lot of the stuff that I learned in art school, I don't use at all now. And lastly, the last and biggest thing that I did not learn in art school is art business. Almost no formal art program education goes into art business at all. You're kind of left on your own for that. I really think this is a huge missed opportunity because they teach you about all these art techniques, but not what to do with them or how to become a professional artist at all. This is one of the biggest reasons why so many art school graduates fail to launch their career after they graduate. There's very little to no information given about the different career possibilities, like the different paths that you can take, about how to price your art, how to reach out to companies, how to navigate contracts and not get screwed over, or how to create and sell your own products. So all of that stuff is something that I had to learn all by myself after I left my studio job and started freelancing. And it was tough. I was really floundering for a while and trying everything I could think of until finally I started kind of realizing how this art business stuff works. So all in all, should you or should you not attend art school? I personally had a good experience. I think it was worth it. So yes, I think you should attend art school, but only if you can afford it. It's only a nice to have, but it's not necessary, it's not crucial, and it's certainly not worth going into debt for. Because one of the biggest hurdles and one of the biggest cons for art school is the cost. Art school can be tremendously expensive. I was very, very lucky because I'm in Canada, and over here, most of post-high school education is in great part subsidized by the government. That really, really helped me. I come from a very poor family, and without that being paid for me, I never would have been able to attend art school at all. Even then, I still had to pay some. I had to pay a few $100s per semester. Most of my costs were my books and all of the art materials that you have to get, of course. You also have to factor in the time that it will take you to complete the program. And during that time, you can't probably work full-time to support yourself. While I was doing the visual arts program, I was able to work part-time during the entire time. But when I switched to animation, that was a much more demanding program. And after one semester, I had to quit my part-time job because I was close to burnout. It was awful. And even though I lived at home, I, in the end, had to take about $15,000 of student loans just to be able to survive during that time until I was finished with my schooling. I think the week that I graduated, I had the last $20 to my name. So I really finished everything in the nick of time. And believe you me, if the day after my graduation, I didn't get up at 8 a.m. to start sending resumes because I needed a job stat. So even if you're in a country where most of the schooling is paid for, there are many different circumstances to take into account, it might still be difficult to go and attend art school. In the US, there is community college, but you might not have a lot of choice for art programs in community college. Most of the good art programs are from private universities, which of course is tremendously expensive. So there are some artists who have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans to attend art school, and that is just a bad idea. A lot of people will tell you that there cannot be a lot of returns with an art career, and that's not true. I mean, I make 6 figures now, I'm doing very well, but I wouldn't recommend anyone get into that kind of debt for any kind of program. That kind of debt is so hard to get out of. It's like you're starting your life from the get-go on hard mode with all of the odds stacked against you, and I just can't recommend that. So that being said, if you can't afford to attend art school, here are some alternatives. First of all is YouTube videos. There's so much now, so much more than when I was growing up. Now there is just all the information and tutorials that you could ever hope for right here on YouTube. I have many picture book illustration tutorials myself, some surface design tutorials as well, especially on how to make patterns. I will leave some links in the description if you want to go check that out. You also have the alternative of online classes, which are much more affordable than traditional school. You really have a lot of freedom there because you can pick some classes here and there and kind of make your own curriculum. You can learn anything from watercolor techniques to lettering and anything in between. You can pick all of the topics that you're interested in or all the topics that you need to achieve your goals. Some great places where you can get online classes very cheap is Skillshare or Domestika. I really like Domestika. They have very high quality classes. You can also check your favorite artists if they have some Patreon subscriptions, or some of them have privately hosted online classes. One of my favorite artists, Kat Coke, she has some classes that she sells on her website. They are usually around $40 to $60 each. And of course, even art business is something that you can learn online. I teach some online art business classes myself. I created a program called the Art Business Bootcamp, and it is a 12-month program. And the doors to that are actually closed right now, but just to give you an idea, I charge $75 per month for that, or $900 in total. So $900 is much less expensive than the thousands and thousands that you would pay to attend art school and university. As I said, it's closed, but I will leave the link to my waiting list down below if you're interested in knowing when that opens up. And lastly, you can also check for online university programs. There are a lot of universities that accept them. You might be able to get into some online university programs that have real accreditations that you can do on your own time. And most of the time, those are much less expensive than actually attending the class. Even universities like Harvard sometimes offer some free schooling online that you can attend, so that's really, really nice. A few years ago, I attended a class on investing from Harvard University online. It was a free class that they were offering. It's definitely worth looking into, especially if you want to become an in-house artist and you actually need a diploma for that. Then you can look to see if there are some online options from your university of choice. So that's it for me today. I really, really hope that you found this helpful. If you would like to learn even more today, I have a free guide that you might enjoy. It's called 7 Surprising Ways to Find Illustration Clients, and it's a great way to get started with your illustration career. If you're not sure where to start and you'd like to start getting some little contracts in, you can definitely find some ideas. As I said, it's absolutely free. I will leave the link to that in the description below. That being said, I really hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help our small channel grow. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!